A very good morning to everyone, and thank you for joining us to the sixth webinar by Myrtha Pools India. Today's topic is the designing of effective water treatment solutions for swimming pools. A few house rules. We request all of you to turn off your videos and mute your microphones. You'll find the panel, and in case you want to move the panel out of your screen, you can just tap your screen with your mouse, and it should disappear. We'll be taking questions from the chat box. So if you have any feedback or any comments or questions, please use the chat box to put it, and they will be picked up at the end of the session. We are aware that some of you have been part of our webinars from day one, but for a few of you who are joining us today for the first time, a quick introduction to Myrtha Pools. We are a company that was established in 1961. We are close to 60 years old. We've got installations in over 70 countries. We have 5 subsidiaries, and the subsidiary in India was set up mid of last year. We have 400 representatives, and most importantly is the other numbers at the end, where we build 1,500 swimming pools a year, with more than 300 of them being big-sized projects. So that just gives the context of the experience that our global team has developed over the years. A quick introduction to the team of Myrtha Pools India. I'd like to introduce my team members, Jay Shankar Arunachalam, who's the National Sales Head, and Saif Nadeem, the Sales Manager for North. And I'm Hakimuddin Habibullah, the Managing Director looking after the India and South Asia region, an Olympian swimmer, and also an engineer who, I love the combination of swimming pools and the engineering. This is a quick glimpse into the previous webinars that were conducted. For those of you who may be interested in the webinars, we'll be happy to share the video links with you. So do get in touch with our team should you want access to any of these previous webinars. I would like to introduce Sergio Piscini. So Sergio, as you can see on your screens, has been with Myrtha Pools since 1998. So comes with a significant amount of experience, has been part of various divisions at Myrtha Pools, and is currently in charge of the Filtration project department that looks at all the big projects which have a very critical intersection with water treatment. And just to give context of why we felt this topic was important, for 2 fundamental reasons. One is that we found that in India, the approach to water treatment is often as a bill of quantities, a BOQ format, so many filters, so many pumps, and we noticed there was a significant gap when it came to the design in the way it was designed for it being effective in the quality of water in the pool. And the second part is in the context we are all in today, where in the middle of the pandemic, while many of the other sporting facilities have begun opening up, and swimming pools around the world have begun opening up, swimming pools in India continue to be closed, which has had a big impact on the aquatic industry. And one of the main reasons is we found that there is still a lack of confidence in the environment when it comes to even the quality of the water, which in many of the other parts of the world is taken for granted as being safe due to regulations. So we found that this was a topic that was extremely critical for the audience in India, and we look forward to hearing more from Sergio, and we welcome Sergio. Sergio, please take this forward.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Sergio Piscini, as already said. I've been working for Myrtha since 1998. Okay, let's start with our presentation. The title of today's webinar is pretty ambitious. The filtration system are quite complicated and involves few aspects. So in this short presentation, you can see the index. We can just scratch the surface, and we will move quick through some point. But we have reserved also a slot dedicated to a brief discussion and question at the end of the presentation. What I'd like to start from, is just mention the European regulation in terms of filtration and water, and looking at the common points we can find to trying to find out the aspect in common to the regulation in order to identify the key point to take in consideration during the engineering of a filtration system. With this knowledge, we will review some project example to point the advantage of pre-engineering design. If we can move it to the new, thank you, Akim. Okay, until today, there's not a common regulation in Europe regarding the filtration of the swimming pool. For instance, we can find DIN for Germany, British standard for UK, UNI for Italy, and so on. It would be clearly complicated to analyze each of these regulations. Therefore, when in this presentation I will talk about sizing or rule, I will refer to the one which have more confidence, that is the UNI 10,637. However, the interesting thing is that we can find common aspects in the various regulations, which allow us to understand what are the key points to keep in mind when defining a filtration system. For instance, each country set a limit on the speed with which the water passed through the filter. This speed is set like 35 meters per hour for Italy and Spain, 30 meters for Switzerland and Germany, 25 meters per hour for UK. The values are different, but what we can understand is that speed of water inside the filter affects the result of filtration. So slower the water crosses the filter, and longer it can deposit the dirt it contains. So give you a better filtration. So when you talk about filter and filtration, don't think just about the diameter on the filter, but also about the velocity speed you want to set as limit for your filtration plant. Also, in the calculation of the turnover, we can find different approaches in Europe. In France, they define the turnover based on the depth of water. In Italy, they define it based on type of use. You can see the small chart in this screen. Again, we can find a correlation between these two different approaches. Actually, the problem lies in the surface and volume ratio. The water contamination depending by the surface, the number of users depending by the surface. In Europe, we set some limits of the number of swimmers for a square meter. For that reason, for the same volume of water, the larger are the surface, the shorter shall be the turnover. So the greater are the surface translate into more pollution, so more filtration needed, and so a turnover more important. Going further, we find other indications related to the circulation. For example, in public swimming pool, the recovery of water must take place via overflow gather. Skimmers are not allowed in public market in Italy. So the norm define also other aspects like chemical parameter. They give indication about the maximum speed of water in pipeline that, in other terms, give a good suggestion about the pipe size. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So how the regulation can help us? The regulation are not just some imposition. It's also something that help us. Rules are an excellent starting point for those who are confronted for the first time with a topic such as the filtration of pool water. The purpose of regulation are at first the safety of the pool user. So be sure that there are avoid suction hazard, avoid virus or bacteria contamination, and so on. Moreover, they give us a sort of best practice. They explain how to size in the pipe, how to choose the number of the filter, where inject the chemical product. So it's a very helpful guideline to how to realize a filtration system. This, at the end, will translate into a filtration system efficiently and therefore in cost saving. Next slide. Okay, going a step back, reading the norm, we can notice that the point on which the most attention is focused are three. The percentage you can see on the screen are not a real data. For circulation, filtration, and disinfection. The percentage you can see on the right is just want just to represent what is the scale of value based on my experience. What I mean, okay, referring to the circulation in the next slide. Thank you. You can imagine, even if your filtration plant, your system provide the current flow rate, so you set a flow rate and your filtration system is quite good and provide you exactly the correct flow amount you need. But you concentrate inlet and suction just in one area of the pool, then what we will expect is to find clean water in the area where we have the inlet and the suction. but also we will expect to find a stagnation area as well. This is more or less what you can see in the picture. As you can see, we have in the lower part clean water, and then start the algae inside the pool. It means that in the top part of this pool, we have not a large movement of water. So a good circulation is what allows the filter to work properly and to spread chemical in water in the best way. For that reason, for public market, UNI prescribe a dye test before the handover. So they want to ensure that all the surface of the pool are covered, thank you, Akim, from the inlet and the recirculation of water. In Myrtha, what we have done is to introduce the CFD calculation to check before we are on site the water circulation and avoid surprise. And about the dye test, if some of you have the opportunity to attend to the test, you will discover things sometime going a different way than what you could thought. It is impossible to realize, to be sure that the result that we can see in the dye test and then in the picture that, as you can see, are very near. The only way is to ensure to realize a filtration system that correspond to the project. If we don't pay attention, if we just provide a schematic drawing, many times I see schematics that just represent the size of the filter, the number of the pump, and basically the main line of the pipeline. Well, if on site they realize something different, also the diffusion inside the pool of the water can be different from what you will expect. Another interesting point, another interesting suggestion I want to give it to you, and if you are interested in, maybe that we come back at the end of the presentation, is about how to concentrate the flow rate. In our experience, the surface of the pool, as I mentioned, the surface of the pool is where the pollution comes into the pool. So with the same volume, if you are able to concentrate the movement of the water on the surface instead of the bottom or the floor of the pool, it will increase the effective of your filtration. And as I say, if you are interested in, at the end of the presentation, we see how Myrtha solved this problem. Okay, next slide, thank you. And now, second place in our ranking, we have the filtration. I place the filtration second in standing because more able we are to retain impurities and less chemical product we will be needed. Because more dirty we can separate from the water and less support bacteria and virus and algae have to proliferate. So a better filtration translates also in a low use of chemical product. You shall know there are many different kinds of filter on the market. It's not easy to define which one is the best. For sure, if you ask to some supplier, each one will tell you that the best is their product. But okay, just to give you an idea of what you can find of the market, commonly you can find sand filter. For sure, they are the most common. They need a low maintenance, and this is a nice pros. They are reliable, and compared to the fluoride, the price is quite low. On cons, they need backwash. That means waste of water. For that reason, in country where the cost of the water is high, they start evaluating other solution. If you need an easy approximation of the water needed for the backwash, so the water you will waste, consider about 10–12% of the flow rate for each filter. I mean, if in your filtration each filter have declared a flow rate of 100 cubic meter per hour, then washing one filter, you will losing about 10 cubic meter of water. Consider that a filter need to be cleaned at least once in a week, but maybe more, it depending by the number of swimmer, and so it depending by the pollution you have in your pools. Another kind of filter we can find on the market are what we call regenerative media. Usually they use perlite or diatomia powder. This filter have high performance in terms of filtration of particles. As you can see below, a sand filter can stop particle about 10 micron of dimension. Perlite arrive near to 1 micron, so they are 10 times more effective than the sand filter. The big advantage with this kind of filter is that they can allow to save a large amount of space, because with the same diameter, the filtering surface is very extended. And the other big advantage, as I mentioned before, you can have a large water saving. This because this kind of filter don't need backwash, and so you don't lose all the water for cleaning the filter. They just need to be to discharge the perlite like once in 20 days or 1 month. And so it's a very quick amount of water that you throw away. At the end, another kind of filter you can find are the cartridge filter. Also in this case, we have the space saving. They are very compact. Also in this case, we have water saving because they don't need backwash. But for cons, usually they have a low flow rate. Usually you can find this kind of filter in the spa pools and small pools. And the other problem related to this kind of filter is that they need a nice maintenance. They need to be open like once in a day, washing the cartridge and then place it again in the filter and restart the filtration. Okay, next slide, please. At the end, we have, last but not least, the disinfection. This is the most complex part, and water chemistry deserves a separate discussion, in my opinion. But I want just to mention something about the chlorine. Many times people ask for different solution than chlorine because they don't like the smell, and sometimes there is a wrong idea about the chlorine, about red eye and so on. But for the European market, and specifically for UNI 10637, chlorine is mandatory. It means that even if UV lamp or ozone are provided, when inspectors visit the pool, they look for chlorine in water. This is because it's important not only to disinfect the water. UV can absolve to this, and ozone probably are the best solution for kill all the virus or bacteria, because ozone are very reactive. But the inspector, they want to make sure, not the inspector, sorry, the regulation wants to ensure that the water are not just disinfected, but also they want to make the water disinfectant. This because if I have just ozone generator installed on my filtration, if I'm a swimmer, I'm in the pool, and I have a flu, or in this period, I don't know, I could have coronavirus that everyone is concerned for. Well, I have coronavirus, and drops of my saliva can spread through the water and contaminate other people. We have to wait the water containing the saliva goes out from the pool. We collect this water. The water is pumped from the balance tank to the filter and then arrive to the ozone generator. Here, the ozone will kill the bacteria, the virus. But as you can imagine, is a long way to arrive to the destruction of the virus. In reverse, if we have a chlorine cover on our water, so if we have chlorine mixed with water, the water are disinfectant and immediately will attack and destroy the virus. For that reason, UV or ozone can help significantly to reduce the amount of chemicals, but cannot replace them. And is very important to make you understand that point. So you need also a chlorine or chemical coverture inside the pool in your water to be sure that no virus, no bacteria can contaminate other people. In Italy, chlorine is mandatory for public market. So if someone asks, but can I realize a pool without chlorine because I don't like the smell? It's not possible. It is mandatory, and so there's no discussion. Okay, next, please. Now, from here, we have just talk about the main line, the regulation give us to, so the point we have to take in mind to realize our filtration system. Now, where we want to set our attention is how to realize this the filtration system. Why we are so concerned about the project of the filtration system? Because sometime before Akim talk about filtration plant realized just on bill of quantity. So I decide what is needed and I just send to the site, and when I'm there, I discover there are some problem. As you can see in this slide, one of the most known opportunity under the project are to be able to detect, to have a clash analysis. Today, all the project in Myrtha pools for the filtration plant are realized in Revit. We are also able to, or better, we work in Revit to be able to supply also BIM project that is mandatory for some market. For UK, it is mandatory today. And as you can see in the picture here, the problem was that we have a filtration room that was already realized. We have to refurbish the filter and the filtration system. Luckily, in our project, we discover there was a problem for the access to the technical room. And so even if just for some centimeter, we was able to send the exact dimension of the filter and provide and arrive on site with the right forklift and so on to be able to introduce the filter into the existing filtration room. Sorry, Akin, from here I'd like to share my screen so I can show some of our project. And here we have one is a large filtration plant. Akim, sorry, can you see my screen? Just to be sure.
But we see your email box.
Sorry?
We can see your email box. Yeah, now we can see the drawings. Okay,
thank you. Maybe there is a little delay in the visualization. Okay, as I explained, our project is made by Revit. This is very helpful to avoid clashes analysis, and in the last case history that are ETC in Sri Lanka, we will see how we are able to avoid clashes. Just to give you a general idea, in this case, we was talking about 50 meter pool, this one. So we have 7 filters, sorry. 7 filter. In this case, the number of the filter is so large because they impose a very slow velocity of water in the filter, the first point that we mentioned today. Important thing, well, usually with the project, we are able to, if we talk about bill of quantity, for sure, here, each single elbow, each single valve is represented, and so we avoid mistake about quantity. So we are able to send exactly the right quantity on site. And on the other hand, we are able from the project, so for the beginning of the discussion, to determine the right price of the material needed. Also, we can have a good analysis of the pipe connection, because sometimes it happens, I told you before, when you have just a schematic of your filtration plant, when you are on site, you can discover something different. In my experience, it happened that for one filtration system we have in China, they ask just for schematics. Okay, we calculate the dimension of the filter, we calculate the power of the pump. At the end, they concern about the filtration system flow rate. They say they can't have the flow rate was on the project. And when we go on site to try to understand what happened, we discover that they place the filtration system like 35 meters far from the pool, and they realize on the pipeline a large amount of elbow. This increase dramatically the total head loss, and so the power of the pump was not enough to manage the total amount of head loss, and so at the end the flow rate was not enough. Another point that is interesting when you go deep into the project is that you can set some standard. For us, we have standard note like that is based on our experience, and so you avoid to forget some important point, because many times is not so clear to the other people that work on the same area, on the same building, like electrician or I don't know, others. Sometimes it's not so clear where are the limit supply. So where I stop and they must start. And sometimes it's not so clear where we have the limit supply about dimension of pipe if we need connection, or about the characteristic of the filtration. Many times it happened that they can see on the drawing we have waste of water, we have a discharge, like in this case, but maybe they don't take in account the total amount of water that we discharge. And it happened to see some underestimation about that, and then to find pumps that are pumps not of the filtration, but pumps for discharge of water that are not able to comply with the total amount of water, and then you will find water inside your technical room that can afflict the pump. About that, always remember to place the pump higher than the floor to avoid that water can damage your pump. Just to give you an idea about the dimension of filtration room, consider that if we are talking about competition pool, like a 25 meter pool with 2 meter deep, need like 50 square meter of technical room, plus a balance tank about 30 cubic meter. If we are talking about a 50 meter pool, we need about 120 square meter of technical room and like 95 cubic meter for the balance tank. Well, this if we are talking about sand filter. If we realize the same amount of the same turnover, so the same amount of flow rate with Defender, we can save like the 30% of the area. Other interesting point, when you realize a real project and not just a schematic, are that you can pay attention, you can avoid to underestimate important point, like one of the basic thing related to the filtration room, but many people forget, is the access to the filtration room. As you can imagine, if this is the area of my filtration room, if I place the door, the access to my room, like in this position, at the top of the filtration area, so I can't place filter in this position, because I can't place a filter directly on the open door. That can dramatically change the dimension of your filtration room. So always pay attention to the access to the filtration area, and be sure in every point of the access there is the space for the filter. The filter are the biggest part of the filtration system, so you need to be sure that all the path that conduce to the filtration area is big enough to pass through, to pass with the filter. This is very important. Another thing that I want to share with you is that in Europe it's mandatory to physically separate the chemical from the rest of the filtration. These to have a safety room, so we don't want that people breathe with chlorine in the air. And the other important thing is that, okay, at first, safety of people. On second place, chlorine can also damage electric parts like pump or control panel, and also can damage with oxidation the metallic part, like the support for the pipe. In that way, on the same idea, I always suggest, or better, we request that about the balance tank, here at the point 7, we always say to seal the passage through the wall, okay, and the access, point 8, sorry, the access to the compensation tank must allow an easy entry-exit. This is very important. If you need to help someone that is, I don't know, during the cleaning of the balance tank, someone have problem. If you need to help them, you need to provide an easy passage to be able to extract the people from the balance tank in an easy way. And last point, always provide to close the access to the balance tank. This is very important, because otherwise the evaporation of chloramine from the balance tank will give you a surcharge of chloramine inside your filtration area, and so oxidation of the metallic component and so on. Okay. Other thing, okay, we can exactly have the distribution of the pipeline. This is very important. Another time, it happens sometime in the schematic, we can see just the distribution of the pipe. During our presentation, we have seen how important is to be sure that in every point of the swimming pool there is a good circulation of the water. That means ensure that the single inlet have exactly the flow rate on the project. In my experience, it happened that when we supply just a schematic, on site they realize a different pipeline from what we have in mind, and at the end the pipeline was not equilibrated, and so we can find a very difference, an evidence of difference from the flow rate we can find on site and the flow rate in the project. So it's very important to define exactly all the path of the pipeline. In another case, this was in Brazil, we have taken a look to a filtration system, traditional with sand filter. I mentioned this example just to give you an idea about a regenerative media filter. As you can see here, was just a 10-meter pool. In this case, we have 120 cubic meter of flow rate, but we was able, because this was a refurbishment, so the filtration area was cannot be touched. We have to adapt everything to the filtration area, existing filtration area, and we was able to place in a space that was like 2.5 meters for 5 meters. We place a filtration of 120 cubic meter. So here they place the balance tank under the pool, and then the filtration area are this one, that as you can see, it's very, very compact. Another time, this is possible just with a good analysis in the project phase. If you hope to send just a list of material and then decide on site the pipeline, I'm sure that you will find many surprises, and you will waste a lot of time on site to solve problem, to decide how to connect all the pipes and to avoid clashes and so on. Talking about clashes, okay, this is the section, and another time is a very, very compact filtration plant. Talking about clashes, the last case history I want to show you is ITC Colombo, that is in Sri Lanka. This is just to mention, are two pools of 50 meters. We are on, these two pools are in the middle of two towers. Okay, and here the filtration plant, you can see how complex it is. In this case, now I hide it, but we have also the air treatment, we have also the electrician, the power distribution and so on. And in this case, I can assure you that the clash analysis take like 1 day of analysis, but at the end, I think that the result it's quite impressive, and it saves a lot of time when you are on site, because everything is already decided, and so you don't need to waste time thinking about solution on site. As you can see, we place also all the support for the pipe, so also clashes with the support are already solved, and we are sure that the concrete in this point have the right characteristic to allow our support and so on. Well, there is many other interesting things to tell about the project, but I saw that the time is gone, so I shut up and I wait for comment and okay. Thank you everyone for your patience, and I hope to give you some idea. And okay. Akim?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sergio.
Thank you for your passion, and sorry if I'm a little bit late.
No, not a problem at all. And while we wait, Sergio, can I request you to maybe mute your mic for a while? Yeah, thank you. So thank you again, Sergio. Really appreciate, you know, I understand it's a very vast topic and something that, you know, is very difficult to cover in a short webinar. I also do, you know, see a few comments about some of our participants who had challenges with seeing the images. We will, again, just get in touch with us. We will share the recording with you, and that might help catch up on some of the visuals that you may not have been able to see. I'd like to remind everyone that they can ask questions. If they have any questions, they can put it up on the chat, and we would pick it up from there. In the meantime, while we look forward to some of your questions, there are a set of questions that we have often encountered, Sergio, and I would start off with sharing a few of them, which I'm sure might resonate with some of the participants as well, and then we'll pick up questions as they also trickle in. So the first question that we find that's commonly asked is, how do you calculate the volume of a balance tank? So I'll repeat, the question is, how do you calculate the volume of a balance tank?
Okay, another time, as we saw in our presentation, usually the regulation give you some suggestions. So if you have doubt, consult the regulation and you will find some interesting answer. But if you are in a preliminary stages, if you want to have an idea about the volume of the balance tank, you can consider about 5% of the volume of the swimming pool. Talking about sand filter. If we are talking about regenerative media filter, so that we don't need the backwash, you can consider about 3–4% of the volume of the pool. This in the preliminary stage. Later on, if you have to make an accurate calculation of the balance tank, just a moment, I try to share an images that we use. Sorry, just a moment. I place into the chat, so it's easy to everyone to see it. Okay, you can find it in the chat here. So calculation for an exact calculation of the balance tank, you have to consider, well, at first it's very important to remember that the water comes from the pool and arrives to the balance tank by gravity. So it's not just question of volume, it's also question of the level of the balance tank. The balance tank always need to be realized under the level of the swimming pool. This is easy, but sometimes someone forget it. Okay, so about the volume, you have to consider you need some water to ensure the suction from the pump, so to avoid the pump can vacuum and aspire some air. So you need like 25-30 centimeters of water to be sure the pump work properly. Then you have to consider the volume of water you need for the backwash of the filter. And we talk in our presentation, you can consider about 10% of the flow rate of the filter. So if you have a filter of 100 cubic meter of filtration, then consider about 10 cubic meter for the backwash. So the backwash volume, for that reason, if we are talking about sand filter, we have to consider this amount. If we are talking about regenerative media, the backwash is not needed, so we can save this volume. Then we have to consider the buff surge. So the water that is, the volume of water is moved from the buff users, from the swimmer. So you have to consider the number of people that, the number of swimmers in your pool, and about 50% of their volume as wave volume. In Italy, rules are that we can't have more than 1 people for 3 square meters of the pool. It means that we have, if we consider 100 liters for people, it means about 30 liters for square meter of the pool. So we talk about volume for the sump of the pump, volume for backwash, volume corresponding to the users, and wave volume that as I explained, is about the 50% of the volume of the people. These give you the entire volume of your balance tank. Taking in account also the access to your balance tank. So if the access, like in the picture, is on the top, so you can exploit all the volume of the balance tank. If you access from a wall, you have to consider that you will lose the volume of the room that that you need for the access, because the water cannot be higher than the access to the balance tank.
Sergio, I think in addition, there are a couple of questions that are here that are in relation to this. So how do you also account for rainwater in an outdoor pool? So, you know, which will come into the balance tank as well. And also in the context of, you know, evaporation loss for outdoor pools.
Okay, well, about the rain, always, I didn't mention it, but the balance tank are always provided by an overflow. This to avoid that the increase of water when people are inside, when it rains or so on. We don't want that the water completely fill the balance tank, and maybe from the access the water comes out and go to the filtration room. So we have this overflow to avoid this problem, and the overflow must be dimensioned to be able to accept all the water that that can increase during the rain. What I do is normally, if we are talking about an exterior pool, for sure, because in interior we have not the problem of the rain. For exterior pool, usually we sell all worldwide, so usually I consult the rain measurement, the maximum rain for the country, and then when I know the millimeter of rain for square meter, that usually is a very easy data to find on the net, then just you multiply the surface of the pool for the millimeter of the rain, and you can understand how many cubic meter per hour your pool can accept. So you dimension the overflow of your balance tank on that data.
Hello, Sergio. Hello.
Yes,
Hello?
Sharon.
Sir, I have a question to ask to Mr. Sergio.
Yes, Sharon.
Hello.
Sharon,
Yeah, can I speak, sir?
Yeah, can I request you, Sharon? I mean, if you don't mind, can you put your question on the chat? We'll pick it up from there.
Sir, I'm not able to put it on the chat for some reason. That's why I came on. No.
Okay.
Talk.
Then please keep your questions short so we can.
Yeah. It is very short, sir. Sergio, during maintenance of the filtration room or filters, how do you manage it? Like, do you have any spare filters to accumulate the one which is under maintenance, or how do you do it? Or you have to schedule some shutdown of the pool for the particular maintenance, be it preventive maintenance or be it shutdown maintenance. How do you do it?
Another time for Italy, we have a regulation that for public market impose at least 2 or more filter for the same filtration pool plan. Sorry, when we are talking of public markets. So 1 filter is allowed just on the private market. If we are talking about public market, you have always to consider more than 1 filter. This is in the idea that if something happen on a filter, if you need to clean it, if you need to repair it, or so on, at least you have the other filter working. So you are always able to warranty at least the 50% of the entire, of the total amount of water. On the other hand, our regulation always asks for a spare pump in line. So if you have a problem with 1 pump, you can immediately turn on the spare pump and have a continuity of services. Our suggestion is, when you provide the spare pump, consider in your control panel to have a daily switch in way that all the pumps are working, because if you have a spare pump and you forget it for 2 years, when you need it because another pump is broke, after 2 years the spare pump will not turn on for sure. So the suggestion is provide a spare pump and use it, so switch it day by day with the other to ensure that all the pumps are working and all the pumps are at the same level.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Coming to the next set of questions, can we have a single filtration system for swimming pool and a diving pool? And I would extend it to say, if you have say a kids pool, so can we have a single filtration, or should they be each a separate filtration system?
This is an interesting question because it's one of the main idea people have to save money, because they say, I realize just one filtration system and they can manage more than one pool. In theory, it is possible. Practically, I tend to suggest to not go in this way. I explain better. It's very related to the use of pools. So if you have two pools that are quite similar, so we have two swim pool with about the same volume. Okay, in this case, I think that it is possible and it could be a good solution. But when you try to mix together very different pool, like the swimming pool and the dive pool that have area and volume ratio very different, so a very different contamination. And if you're talking about the kids pool, where the water is the depth is very small, and so another time the ratio area on volume, it's very different from the other pool. Mixed together the water, so use the same filtration plant is a little bit risky. Risky in terms of management. I mean that the pollution inside the pool will be very different. So it will be very different to manage the exact chlorination for each pool. It means that you can have the right parameter inside the swimming pool because it's the large amount of volume, but the chlorination are totally not sufficient for the baby, where it's very important to have a good treatment, because as I told, the kids pool are the most contaminated pool that you can find around. Another point, if you want to manage a difference in terms of temperature, so if you want to manage, I don't know, I have a spa pool where I want to maintain 32, 34 degree, and the swimming pool where I have 27 degree, you can understand, it's impossible to mix together the water and then have different temperature on the different pool. Or better, you can find some solution, but it's very difficult to manage. So in my opinion, in my experience, what I suggest is, if the pool have the same purpose, are near same temperature, same purpose, so two swimming pool, you can consider this solution. If you have different pool with different area and volume ratio and so on, I suggest to not realize only one filtration plant for the pool. Last point, if you need to have a maintenance on your filtration system, you need to stop the entire swimming pool center. On the other solution, a filtration plant for each pool, you can close the 25 meter, but the 50 meter is working, and so on. So, well, I hope to answer to your question.
Yeah, even I hope that answered the question. The next question, Sergio, we have is, what should be the approximate percentage of volume of filter room for a pool? So the space required based on the volume of water.
Another time, this is a simplification. Is not so easy to determine the volume of the filtration room, just because during the presentation I mentioned how just the access to the filtration room can impact on the disposition of filter and pumps, and so it can affect the volume of the filtration area. But just to I wrote down some data I mentioned during the presentation, talking about the swimming pool. If we are talking about a 25 meter pool, you can consider a 50 square meter of filtration area, plus a 30 cubic meter of balance tank. If we are talking about a 50 meter pool, we need like 120 square meter, plus 100 cubic meter of balance tank. These for the common sand filters. I don't have a fixed percentage of the volume of the pool for the filtration. But this is just the dimension I give you is the most common for the two kind of people. As Myrtha, we also have a standard for the filtration room. So if you need also a quick answer, when you know the flow rate you need, it's very quick for us to give you some indication about the dimension of the filtration room.
Thank you, Sergio. I do understand how it's difficult to give a general answer to it, but I hope we were able to give a context, at least a starting point, for the amount of space required. Yes. Another question.
I try to do this exercise, and I will send you my result.
Thank you. The next question that I'd like to go to is in terms of, the question is, how do we measure the uniformity of the water current in the pool for an existing pool? So if I can probably rephrase that question, I believe it's about how do we anticipate the circulation in an existing pool so that the disinfection is spreading out uniformly.
The first answer in my mind is to simulate the dye test, and the dye test always say the truth. I mean, if you put some color inside the water, you will see all the area that is covered from the circulation and the area where you will find the stagnant area. So the best way to know about the circulation in pool is for sure the dye test. If you have not the opportunity to perform a dye test, Myrtha can help, as we see in the presentation. We arrange a CFD model. So in the past, I did it on some existing pool. We go on site, inlet by inlet, we measure the flow rate, and then we place the data inside the computer, and we calculate we have a simulation of the circulation inside the pool. This is something we can do for sure. Is not so easy. I mean, it needs a large expertise. In Myrtha, we are able to do it, but we need some year to arrive at that point. The easy way is the dye test. Place the color inside and see how it will go through the pool. It's important to follow the rules for the dye test. I mean, the color need to be, usually they use aerochrome. The important thing is a color that doesn't diffuse into the water just for dilution. He have to go around just by circulation. I mean, if you place a drop of aerochrome inside water, the drop still remain on the same point. Just the circulation make it go away in the pool.
Sergio, was there any, do you have a reference? I know for some swimming pools, the dye test has also a time reference. It needs to diffuse in every part of the pool within a certain period of time. So could you give some basic reference of that, at what speed or at what rate the diffusion should also happen?
Yes, the proof is considered passed if from the moment the color, usually you place a certain quantity of colors inside the balance tank, then you turn on your filtration plant. From the moment that the color start to flow out from the inlet, from that moment you have to measure 15 minutes. In 15 minutes, the entire surface of the pool need to have the same color. If you are able to do that, the test is considered passed. If not, the circulation is not good enough. Usually, there is a second part of the test that is the inverse test, the inversion of the test. So when you have all the pool on the same color, you place chlorine inside the balance tank, and then the chlorine start to clean the water. So in 15 minutes, you need to clean all the entire surface of the water. So the time is about 15 minutes to color the entire pool, to consider the test passed.
Thank you, Sergio. I hope that answered your question.
Just to know, there are countries that are worst or better, they pay more attention than Italy, and they ask for 12 minutes. But okay, you can consider 15 minutes.
Thank you, Sergio. And I see a question from Husni. So I'm just going to, the question is, when shall we consider air score for filter backwash? I'll repeat. When shall we consider air score for filter backwash?
Sorry, I don't understand S-score.
Okay, so I would just request Husni, if you could unmute your mic and maybe ask your question.
Yes, hi. Can you hear?
Yes. Yes.
I noticed in your presentation there's an air blower for filter, and I know that in some cases people apply air to help the backwash process.
Yes, it is true. In Europe, it's not mandatory for all the country. In Italy, it's not mandatory. In Switzerland, it is. Also in UK, it is. Hair helps to move this sand. I talk about sand, but inside the sand filter, you can also use glass or other material. Well, doesn't matter. The air will help, because when we have the backwash, it means that the water
Sergio, we are unable to hear you. Hello, Sergio. We are unable to hear you. Hello, Sergio. Are you
hello, some internet problems.
No, not a problem. Yeah, sorry, we lost you. You had started to answer the question and we lost you. So.
Okay. I don't know. I was telling that in Europe, not for all the country are mandatory the air for the backwashing of the filter. In Italy, it isn't. In UK, Switzerland, Germany, it is. Usually, during the filtration, the water comes from the top of the filter and pass through the sand, so stop the dirt, and the water comes out from the lower part of the filter. During the backwash, the water comes from the lower and then push the sand near on the top to remove all the dirt, so to clean the sand of the glass that you use for the filtration. In flat, also air helps to move the sand and so give you a better cleaning of the filter. So the pros is that you have a better cleaning of the filter. The cons are that forgive this operation, you need more time to perform the backwash. So at the end, in flat air, it's good. It's give you a better cleaning of the filter. In many countries, is not mandatory. So you can use it. We have a lot of a nice reference, even if without air. So also in my opinion, it's something more than the minimum required. So it's better, it's not mandatory.
Okay, noted. Thank you, Sergio.
Thank you, Husni, and thank you, Sergio.
Thanks.
Another question, I know it's a very important question in the Indian context. Sergio, were you able to hear me? Hello, Sergio, can you hear me?
Yes, I heard you.
Okay, so I'll repeat my question. The question was, how many hours in a day should the filtration system run?
Okay, it's easy for me to answer to this question because I don't need to do it. Because for European market, if we are talking about public swimming pool, they ask for 24-hour working time. So for public market in Europe, the filtration system need to go 24-hour on 24-hour. What we do to reduce, to save energy and so on, is that we place in our filtration system, we usually use inverter, and so we relate the filtration to the quality of the water. So during the closing time of the center, like in night time, we check the chemical parameter. If everything is okay, then we reduce the velocity of the pump. So the filtration system is working, but is working slower and so with less power during the night shift.
Great. Thank you, Sergio. With this, we would call an end to today's session. I do notice that there may be one or two questions that we've not been able to complete, but we'll get in touch with you offline and help you. For those who may have questions subsequently, we request you to please do send us your questions and during your feedback. And again, would like to thank Sergio for his time to help all of us through this. And we look forward to everyone's continued engagement as we also plan future engagements with you all. So thank you everyone for attending it, and thanks again, Sergio, for your presentation.
Thank you for your patience, and well, wait for your question in email, and then to go on with this kind of webinar and so on, that I think could be very interesting. Thank you.